Hey everyone, welcome to the Gaming X. Today, we're taking a look at the console episode 2 on the Xbox One. Is this a adventure game worthy of its episodic format, or will you want to switch off from future episodes? Well, sit back, relax, hit that subscribe button and like the video, it truly does help the channel, and let's jump in and find out. So you may notice I did not release a review for episode 1 of the console, and with reason. I wanted to initially release a complete series in the coming months when we had the full package. I actually went out, I used my own money to pick up that first episode because I am a fan of the adventure genre, but honestly I was wary of investing for a full season of a game that I knew really very little about. Then though, the developers, they recently reached out to me for a review and they supplied the code, so well, honestly, here I am. I always intended to pick this episode up anyway and continue building towards that later complete video, but now I don't want to do a disservice to the developers who were kind enough to supply the channel with access. So the reason I was actually holding off though was I personally believe with games like this, it's very hard to judge them from one episode to the next. A bad episode on its own can actually easily be saved by a fantastic follow-up. It might not have necessarily been a bad episode, but it needed the context of that later content. What may have felt underwhelming before is basically saved from the revelations we find later. So let's start things off with story very briefly, and I'm going to keep this entirely spoiler free. The first episode of the council threw Louis, the main protagonist here, headfirst into the mystery, with the game opening as you arrive at a mysterious island. Your mother before you made this same journey, but she has, in adventure game fashion, gone missing after her invitation to the island for a meeting of world leaders hosted by a Lord Mortimer. Your only goal really given to you in episode 1 in fact was to, well, find her. Unfortunately though, with episode 1, the story, it never really went anywhere. It simply felt like it was one conversation after another, with very little context or relation to that overarching missing persons case. Then we had some puzzles thrown in there to solve, which they were enjoyable, but they felt like they were very basic or simply a play on the fetch quest formula. Now let's talk episode 2 though without spoilers, and I've got to say this, it's a huge step up. The storyline here, first of all, it introduces more characters and exploration plays a much bigger part. The first, as I said, it very much felt like you were simply being directed from character to character who were typically within a few steps of each other, so it's great to finally start stretching those exploration muscles, and it leaves a bit more in direction to your own decision as the player. Alongside this, the puzzles here, they took a huge step up in difficulty, and they brought along with them a sense of reward I never really experienced during that first episode's introduction narrative. With these improvements though, I will say the pace, it's still very slow here, and honestly, both of these episodes could have been condensed into one single release just to ramp up the progression a little bit quicker. It's still very much fitting into the niche market that actively looks out for these style of games. What I'm saying here is I'm just still not on the edge of my seat in anticipation, and now completing episode 2, I'm starting to very much doubt if that will ever happen, and perhaps I should start looking more at this as a character study than anything. It's interesting, but it's not exciting. It's dialogue rich, but it's struggling to find the spine of its storyline or mystery. It's no doubt an improvement in story over episode 1, but it still might not be quite enough for most gamers out there, at least not yet. So graphics and the console for me maintains its appearance from that first episode, and understandably so. First of all, character design here, it's truly fantastic. These are exaggerated, there's no doubt about it, as we find a world that's populated with almost caricatures of their typical look. It does though suit the gothic undertone of this tale without a doubt, and interactions are always appealing, though I will say they can appear a bit rigid at times during conversation. As we progress through the episode 3, 4 and 5, I'd love to see some small mannerisms in there and actions come into play, so we can feel like there's more life to them than simply repeating a set routine, waiting for the next conversation. Then we do have the environments, and unlike the first episode, I've got to say it's hit and miss. Some of those environments are truly beautiful, where everything is no more than a foot away from something gold. It simply reinforces the flamboyant nature of these mighty world leaders. Unfortunately though, this attention to detail and its consistency is lacking. They do simply miss the mark, and it goes from one extreme of being absolutely beautiful to look at to the complete polar opposite. Some locations are rich with small details and objects with texture, pushing it towards that necessary level of realism. Then, however, you navigate to another of the many locations or corridors, and you're going to find textures at a complete minimum, zero life, and repeated objects like they went to IKEA and ordered 100 wooden seats to fill these passages. Fortunately, I will say this, we get a number of new locations to explore here, including of course those from episode 1, so the world size, it makes a decent jump to buffer these weaker moments. It's not bad at all, the great moments are really stand out at times, but unfortunately they just exaggerate those lower effort moments. It's a gameplay, and this is where the council, in my opinion, comes into its own. Continuing from episode 1, it sees an opportunity to continue to build upon your character skill set and talents. This is really where the council for me separated itself. It brought to it an RPG element to a genre that's getting more and more overpopulated. These points and talents, they allow you to then open different conversational paths, and they allow you to influence or relate to specific characters in the game world. You'll start building these skill points and traits into your game strategy. Now, having played episode 1, I did feel much more equipped here to start building a palette of skills that would benefit in progressing the storyline. Additionally, on top of this now, we also have books as you progress, which work in the same way to develop your abilities. Then, finally, we have the inventory, which, like all adventure games before it, are used to typically progress physically through the locations or in some way with a character around you. It's no doubt a complicated system, you've got 3 or 4 systems there alone, but it's one that is slowly filtered in through episode 1 and 2, so it does always feel manageable. With this covered, by far one of my favourite parts of the Council series so far is its approach to progression. There is no game over screen here, meaning each player's experience is completely different. This game, for those that don't know, it has multiple endings. Episode 1 alone had 4 different endings. So while one character may have enjoyed his conversations with me and may even help me progress the storyline, that may be entirely different for you. It's absolutely painful when you make that wrong decision and you immediately recognise it. I even tried to restart the game at one point, but this has the autosave speed of a Ferrari, so good luck there if you try and do that yourself. Fortunately though, this just reinforces the potential replayability we have ahead of us if the story can find itself. Finally, sound and music, and the great work here from episode 1 just continues. Voice acting for the majority is great. Every single line of dialogue here has a recording to reinforce it. But I will say, naturally, with a game which has verbal diarrhea at times like this one, you are of course going to find some weak moments in here, but it in no way lets down the package. Then the sound effects, and it's simply put absolutely stunning. This world, it completely comes to life on the sound front, like they pieced every single object in these rooms from the smallest to the largest together. It really is incredible work. Finally, we have the music, and we have a orchestral track here for the majority that hits all the right marks. It fits the location, it informs the player of progression, or perhaps even missteps, and most importantly, it reinforces the emotional moments you'll face throughout. So the final verdict on the council, as I said at the beginning, it's in a strange place. With 3 episodes remaining, the pacing issues I complain about could very well be elevated by a single moment in a future release, one that ties all of these little moments together. Actually, in fact, I can already say with episode 2's developments, episode 1 it did take a slight step up. Then, as a package at least on a performance front, graphics are for the majority of the playtime fantastic to look at, but as I said, do expect some slightly weak moments in there to hinder that experience. On top of this, we have a sound and music field that I can confidently say is some of the best work out there right now, and this is all supported by gameplay, which has taken a risk to expand the genre, and for the large part it works very well and it kept me coming back. Unfortunately though, it's the story here that's letting the package down right now. It's simply just so slow, and I'm a fan of talkative games, but I'm still struggling to find my investment in these characters. With 3 episodes to go, we have a lot of story ahead of us that could really turn things around quickly. You know, like a Tarantino movie, talking and little context can often lead us to that fantastic 3rd act, and it could instantly make this one a recommendation. But right now, for this game, that's a difficult thing for me to do. Now, if you do want to jump in, I'd give you this advice. I'd actually go the single episode route. It might cost a tiny bit more in the long run, but you could also be saving yourself from a story that goes nowhere compared to if you purchase that full package and never end up playing it anyway. The Gaming X awards the council a slightly above average 6 out of 10. So tell me this, have you been playing this one? Are you enjoying the pacing, or will you be avoiding it? Let me know in the comments below with your thoughts, and hit subscribe to be notified of future episode reviews, as well as all your latest news and reviews across the Xbox One, the PS4, and of course the Nintendo Switch. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you soon on the next Gaming X.